Welcome back, guys. You may have been waiting for this video for a long time out there. We are going to be going over the characters that I think are worth considering pulling for before Neovisions comes out. Obviously, if there's a favorite character out there that you've been waiting for, you've been wanting, that takes precedent over everything else. You're here for fun. That's my #1 rule on the channel or in the game. If you have a favorite character, get that character, go for it. Don't feel bad because it's your favorite character. You're gonna have friendly fun with that character. On this list, you're not gonna find any sort of damage dealers whatsoever, period. Doesn't matter how good they are when they come out, they're just not going to hold up to Neovisions units. So let's get started with everyone's obvious character that's gonna make this list, which is gonna be Freedom Seeker Vaughn. This is gonna be a top tier breaking type character. There's gonna be a couple of characters like him on this list, and this is because as you compare characters to their Neovision counterparts, when it comes down to breakers and healers and supports and things of that nature, from what we've seen so far, they're really just not that big of a difference, guys. And we haven't really seen that many of those type of characters as Neovision units. But when it comes to comparing the Neovision damage dealers to the damage dealers we have now, the Neovision ones just blow them away. And so unless you're pulling for a character that's your favorite character from your favorite Final Fantasy, if they're a damage dealer, it's just not really worth it. However, let's get into characters like Freedom Seeker Vaughn, or as it says here, Boy Vaughn Seeking Freedom. His TMR is going to be a materia that gives immunity to paralysis, 20% dodge, and 50% true dual wield. So a very fantastic, flexible TMR to utilize on pretty much anyone, right? If you want to make someone dodgy and true dual wield, that's going to be a benefit for you. If you want to just use it for the dodge, that's a benefit. If you want to use it just for the true dual wield, you can also use it that way. So a very flexible TMR there. His STMR is the Durandal. It is going to be 163 attack, one-handed sword that gives 30% dodge, all right, to physical attacks, as well as 30% draw attack. So you can utilize this. You can put this on Vaughn. He's also very good at it, being a 100% dodge, 100% provoking type character. You can do a lot of cool things with him, and he's going to be able to utilize this sword very well. And other characters might be able to utilize this sword in some weird draw attack / tanking damage builds. That's why Vaughn is pretty cool. He does a lot of different things. He's got some damage in him, but as we just talked about, that's not the selling point here. He's got a lot of great support, a lot of great breaks, a lot of neat things that you can do with him. So let's go over his kit really quickly. All right, let's talk about all the cool things that he can do. So he has a cooldown here called Assault Strike Break, which removes all buffs from an enemy on a 6-turn cooldown available on turn 1, 40 times mod, right? But removes all buffs, not buffs and debuffs, just a buff. So it leaves all your imperils, all your breaks, all your bad things that you put on the enemy, they're still going to be there. All the good things that are on the enemy, you're going to take off. So that's a thing there. His weakest break here is a 75% attack, defense, magic, and spirit break for 2 turns to all enemies here with full break burst. Very strong. Weakest break, 75% backup there. He also has Thief Attract, which does a small amount of damage and does a 100% provoke for 2 turns to the caster. So we just talked about him being able to facilitate a 100% dodge build very easily between his TMR and his STMR. And this is going to help him do that provoke thing as well if you don't have all the draw attack gear. So even if you don't have the draw attack gear, you can get in here with Thief Attract as one of his abilities, which he does have double and triple cast. You'll be able to get in there and do a lot of cool stuff. Do his supportive aspects, and then come in and every other turn use this 2-turn provoke there. He also has Restitution, probably revive here, which he can revive a KO'd ally. He also has Fire and Wind Imperil. 120% fire and wind and peril as well, so very strong supplementary imperiler for your team there as well. He also has full breakdown, which is an 80% attack, defense, magic, and spirit break for 5 turns to an enemy. It also has a 20 times mod attached to it, so you can just get in there and spam this skill out on a single target. You have 75% AoE, 80% single target as a skill there. We have Ground Zero here, which is going to give him, a 250% attack buff, 40 mod, does a 10 times mod increase to his other skills. Then we have the big one here, the Jadeite Parry, 4-turn cooldown available on turn 1. We've talked about how strong AoE Mirage is for your party, right? You have to spam it every single turn on that character who's doing that 1-stack Mirage every other turn. Use it, use it, use it, use it, use it. Very powerful effect. Vaughn goes above and beyond though. It's a 4-turn cooldown available on turn 1. What it does is it will put up a 1 stack of Mirage on your whole party for 1 turn, but then it's going to auto cast that auto cast it again, and auto cast it again. So you get a stack the turn you cast it, a stack the turn after you cast it, and then a stack the third turn afterwards, and then a stack the fourth turn afterwards. And so you're going to be able to swing all the way around. You basically need to cast the skill one time, and then when the skill is back up on cooldown, you're ready to use it again. That's the turn that is going to be the turn where you actually need to put it back up. So you're going to be able to use this skill, get 4 turns worth of AoE Mirage stacks. It's got a 4-turn cooldown, good to go there. And then he also has a roll ray single target chaining here with luminescence. So very cool stuff for passives. You know, he's got a lot of attack, defense, magic, and spirit. So he's going to be a mix and match of being able to do a little bit of damage here, being able to be tanky as well if you give him a light or heavy shield, right? He does have some true dual wield, true double hand, you know, single wielding any weapon is in here as well. So you can kind of make him do damage while his damage is relevant before Neo Visions, but then after Neo Visions comes out, you can make him as tanky as possible, and he's gonna be able to do that break and peril thing. A lot of very strong consistency, a lot of AoE Mirage coming out, and he also has the upper hand on being able to be very dodgy because he also has 40% passive physical evasion there, as well as a pretty hard-hitting limit burst here and a lot of high tide, as well as the 6x mod cap. So very cool stuff that you can utilize with him here. Also, the unlock skills give him a 130% fire imperil, as well as a 130% wind imperil, which are pretty huge imperils going into the future. Very, very strong imperils to have in your back pocket there. And his LB, obviously, 85% attack, defense, magic, and spirit break for 2 turns to all enemies there with a 130% fire imperil, 55 times mod, so decent damage, especially before Neo Visions. It also can steal some items from your enemies. So he's very strong if you're looking for a very competent breaker with some good damage before Neo Visions. After Neo Visions comes out, like we talked about, the damage isn't going to be as relevant. There's going to be people doing way more damage than Freedom Seeker Vaughn is, but he's got the strong breaks, he's got the strong imperil, so he can do the support tank thing for you very, very well, right? Support AoE, support single target, physical dodge, as well as the AoE Mirage for your party. So he's got all of those things very, very strong, suited for all of them, and that is why Freedom Seeker Vaughn sticks out and sneaks in to the Neo Visions rankings. Now, someone very similar to Neo Vision Seeker Vaughn boy is going to be Lakshmi Lid. So Lakshmi Lid is going to be a little bit different than Vaughn, but she also has some very strong supportive capabilities. So her TMR is a materia that gives 30% attack, 20% HP and spirit. She also has the ability to counter with Lakshmi synergy. So anyone who has this TMR on is going to be able to counter 30% proc rate, whether it's physical or magical damage, with Lakshmi synergy, and it's going to cure all status ailments on all allies. So pretty cool. You can counter with an Asuna on your whole party, which is pretty powerful there, in case the boss does some sort of thing where they remove your resistance to status ailments and then hit your entire team with status ailments. If you have this on, then you have a chance to just remove all those status ailments the boss hits you with, even though they just removed all of your very strong status ailment resistance immunity type buffs. So her STMR here is a hammer, 154 attack, 41 spirit, 100% high tide, as well as stop and charm immunity as well. These are skills that you get access to. This is not a passive though, so just like Lakshmi has the AoE stop and the AoE charm buffs that she can cast, whoever has this hammer equipped will have those 2 buffs as well. So nothing super crazy on this hammer. That's going to be the most unique thing. Perhaps you already have a character who can utilize stop and charm immunity. Perhaps you don't. Whether this is going to be strong for you is going to be dictated by your setup. There's also other ways, like we just talked about with the actual Lakshmi Esper. If you really need an effect like this, you aren't going to need this hammer to have access to it. So it kind of makes it a little bit worse in my opinion here. So let's go down into her innate abilities here. Okay, she has access to a lot of cool things that we can talk about here. She has charm removal. All right, she has some sort of Asuna type effects. She does have 75% backup breaks, attacking in magic, 75% for 4 turns to all enemies, and then another skill, 75% defense and spirit break for 4 turns to all enemies as well. She also has 80% attack and magic for 3 turns to a single target, as well as 80% defense and spirit for 3 turns to a single target as well. The plus side here is that unlike Vaughn, who does chain finishing type skills, whose damage is going to be a little bit more relevant before Neo Visions, if you want to use them as like a supplementary damage dealer, Lakshmi Lid can be used as a support chainer, because these, instead of being chain finish skills, are absolute mirror of equity chaining type chain family. So there's a lot of tanks out there who do the absolute mirror of equity chaining skills. So if you had a tank who does that, and you have a a support like Lakshmi Lid, then you can have them chained together. You can keep breaking the boss, chaining up using chain finishers or chain weavers, limit burst damage dealers, whatever type of character you want to be using, they're going to facilitate that in case that's something that you want to do here. She has Lotus Flower Bud for a little bit of HP and MP healing. She has Fire, Wind, and Light Imperil of 100% for 3 turns to an enemy with a AT chaining frame skill attached to that. She has dual cast and triple cast for some of her skills here. And then getting into her cooldown skills here, she does have 4-turn cooldown available on turn 1. Very strong skill here. Removes all buffs from all enemies, and then is an 80% attack, defense, magic, and spirit break as well. So she is going to be main job, just like Vaughn, big breaker. She's going to have that capability as you've seen, and she's also going to have the same very important remove all buff thing, right? You don't necessarily need to have the remove all just buff sort of thing, but it's going to make your life a little bit easier. You know, anytime you get into a head scratcher moment where, you know, you have all these big strong breaks up on the enemy, you have all your big imperils, you're ready to do damage, but they put up a defensive buff, an attack buff that you need to remove. These sort of skills help you out in those situations, and she does have access to that as well. She also has a skill that is a 120% fire, wind, and light imperil for 1 turn that also auto casts the turn after that. So in case you fight a boss that removes its own imperils that you have on it, right, it dispels itself, this can help you out there with back-to-back burst there. Pretty good cooldown skill there. And then her final cooldown skill, she has increased resistance to all status ailments by 100% for 3 turns to all allies, increased resistance to attack, defense, magic, and spirit break, as well as stop and charm for 3 turns as well. Sadly though, this is a 6-turn cooldown, so she can't really keep this up full time by herself, but it is there as like a backup supportive option. Maybe your healer needs to do something else, or you just plan on beating the boss in 3 turns. You can use that there as well. She also has some unlock skills that we'll go over, which are going to be a Absolute Mirror of Equity 15 times mod skill, as well as a machine killer buff for physical and magical damage. As far as passives goes, you kind of know where this is going to be going. She's got a little bit of attack passives, but she's got some defense and spirit passives kind of thrown in there. She has Lakshmi bonuses, so you can gain extra stats with Lakshmi equipped, which a lot of the time you might actually just end up putting Lakshmi on her because she's a support type character. So you can go ahead and throw Lakshmi on her, build your Lakshmi tanky, HP, defense, and spirit, all that stuff. You're going to have a lot of extra stats here because Lakshmi is a pretty bulky Esper. She's going to get a little bit extra help from that there. Now, she also is going to be immune to Charm, Confuse, Silence. She's going to have Earth, Ice, and Dark resistance there, as well as 6 Limit Burst Gauge crystals per turn, 100% High Tide, and her Limit Burst is obviously an 85% attack, defense, magic, and spirit break for 3 turns to all enemies. Also has a chance to charm them, but bosses are charm immune nowadays too, and it is a 40 times multiplier, although the multiplier isn't that big of a deal. So you have not only Freedom Seeker Vaughn for a very strong breaker support type character, but you have Lakshmi Lid as well. Which one you want is going to be dependent on whether or not you want a Mirage. Vaughn is the only one that has that. If you want a draw attack, evasion tank, Vaughn is better at that as well. But Lakshmi Lid has some other aspects that are a little bit better in her kit, right? They both break very fantastically. Is that even a word, fantastically? They're both fantastic breakers. One of them is better at miraging and being dodgy, whereas Lid is better at a little bit slightly better at having multiple different imperils, and she also has a little bit of MP heal, etc. She also does chain with Absolute Mirror of Equity, whereas Freedom Seeker Vaughn chains with the Aurora Ray family. So those are going to be your 2 big breaker supports. Moving on from that, though, we're going to have someone who kind of slides in here. All right, this is going to be Daisy. Daisy here is not my favorite character in the game, but she is a very bulky physical tank. So Daisy's probably going to be outside of some sort of global exclusive thing that we might have access to, and that's what this entire list is about. Obviously, future sight for characters that we already know are coming out. She's going to be a very bulky physical tank that you can get your hands on. Her TMR is a Materia, 50% defense, 2 Limit Burst Gauge crystals per turn. STMR is the Daisy Arm Guard, which will give you 30% general mitigation as the battle starts or if she gets revived. So nothing super crazy there, but you can gain access to them. But Daisy does have one very strong aspect that makes her stick out compared to a lot of other tanks out there. So let's go down into her typical tank role here. She does have, mitigations out the wazoo here. So she's got play highlights, which can be a little bit of defense buff, some high tide or LB gauge straight up fill for you, 3 to 4 crystals there, 30% physical mitigation there. She has a 75% earth imperil attached to a Stardust Ray chaining skill. She has a 75% light imperil attached to a Stardust Ray chaining skill. Some backup breaks of 65%, nothing crazy there. The general physical cover, she has that offered to you as well, as it gives her earth and light resistance, which is pretty decent. She has some dual cast. She has a 60% general mitigation buff here with defense roll, gives her 5 LB gauge crystals. It also unlocks spirit method, block method, and recover method for 4 turns to her as well. And then we have offense roll here, which gives her 200% attack buff. It also enables earth method, light method, revive method, and gives her 50% general mitigation. And this is attached to a Stardust Ray chaining skill. So she is a support Stardust Ray tank. So you can pair her with someone else who does Stardust Ray, and you can maybe fit in a chain finisher if that is something that you're looking out for. One of the things that makes her stick out, though, in comparison to all of the other tanks here, is she has Heroine of Shield, as it's translated here. It's a 6-turn cooldown, available on turn 1, and it gives a 70% physical damage mitigation for 4 turns to your whole party. It also gives 100% earth and light resistance for 4 turns to your whole party as well. So this is going to help you beat out any sort of uncoverable physical type, physical damage attack, any sort of thing that you can't cover but does physical damage. This will work against, and it's going to help you out there. It's very similar to like Sacred Shield Charlotte's skill that gave your whole party large magic resist. This is the alternative to that, and this lasts 4 turns. 70% physical mitigation for 4 turns. It applies to her, applies to your party. Very strong skill there. One of the, if not the thing that makes her stand out against a lot of other physical tanks. We have leading actress here. She does get this other mitigation. 10% mitigations against human type enemies for 4 turns to her allies is a new mitigation. It really isn't that big of a deal though, guys. The way that mitigations stack up in this game, it's not that big of a deal, right? If you already have the big 70% physical mitigation, maybe 50% general mitigation from a support, maybe some magic mitigation for the magic damage going on, her own cover mitigation, the 10% human mitigation, it's really not reducing your damage by that much. You might be reducing your damage by an extra literal 1 to 2 at best percent here for the damage that she is taking there. So it's not that big of a deal, but it is there in her kit, a little bit of extra tankiness there. For stats, she's got your typical tank stats, attack defense, HP, spirit. She's just pretty tanky for a character. She's got earth and light resistance. We've seen this sort of atypical stat thing from a character before as a tank. They have like 2 elements that they're tanky against, so they have a lot of natural resistance. And then after that, it's just a bunch of HP, defense, and spirit. Her unlocked skills here, block method, recover method, spirit method, earth method, light method, and revive method. We have recover method, which is another way for her to cast AoE cover. It also puts a 3000 HP barrier on all allies and gives her a HP regen effect to herself. Block method does damage mitigation, general damage mitigation of 50% for 3 turns to your party, as well as increased limit burst gauge by 3 to 4. Spirit method is earth and light resistance of 100% and 15% physical mitigation against human type enemies for 3 turns as well. Like I said before, not that big of a deal. Then we have earth method and light method, which are 100% imperils for the respective elements there and 100% high tide for her. And then we have revive method, which is her ability to give herself 100% auto revive for 1 turn to herself. It also gives her a little bit of LB gauge. What does her LB do? It does proc her cover here, and it's going to give her an 80% proc rate, cover mitigation of 60 to 80% for 5 turns to the caster. It also increases your earth and light resistance by 110% for 5 turns to all allies. Not that big of a deal. A lot of the times you're going to be using her for the 70% physical mitigation, and then you're going to be unlocking block method for the 50% general mitigation. So she's pretty cool. She does bring big mitigations. That's why she makes the list. I know a lot of you guys out there, you already have a character like this, but for those of you who don't, she might be worth your consideration going forward because she's going to be tanky. She's going to have those big mitigations for your party, and she does have general mitigation and physical mitigation in 1 roll as a tank. And like we talked about, she does do the other things as well with the self-revive, the shields, all of that good stuff. So that's going to be Daisy. And moving on to the last one here, we're going to have Poppy, aka CG Pone. CG Pone is going to be a support buffer type character who does still stand out. We probably will see more copies of this sort of archetype of character into the future. which is giving characters the ability to do bonus damage of certain elements with a new type of buff here. We see that here sort of imitated on her STMR, which is a staff here. All right, it has the passive Happiness Drawing, which gives you a buff that increases water, wind, and light physical damage as well as magical damage by 10%. So it's a buff that increases elemental damage that you do by X%, which means it's a new multiplier, which means it's actually going to be adding straight up 10% bonus damage. And that's what CG Pwn, one of the strongest things that she can do is she just straight up gives you bonus damage. So if you're going to do 1,000,000 damage with a 15% buff, you're going to be doing 1,150,000 damage. So you eke out free damage for having her in your team. Her TMR is also pretty popular and pretty powerful. 40% spirit, 2 LB gauge crystals per turn, as well as 30% spirit and 20% HP when you're equipped with the staff. So that's 70% spirit and 20% health, 2 LB gauge crystals per turn for having a staff equipped. Now let's go over her abilities here. First 2 skills, we have the ability Pastel Wall Physics and Pastel Wall Magic here. So we have 30% physical mitigation with a 1500 HP barrier. That's Pastel Wall Physics. The magic version is 30% magic mitigation with a 1500 HP barrier. If you use it after a certain skill called Inspiration, it actually goes up to a 45% mitigation and a 3000 HP barrier. So she does have big, strong physical and magical mitigation. If you want to look at what Inspiration does, we'll go down here to Inspiration, which is her big cooldown skill. It's 3-turn cooldown, available on turn 1. And what it's going to do, it's going to give her 30% HP, a little bit of MP back, going to give herself a 200% spirit buff, remove all of her own breaks, and give her triple cast. So you can go ahead and do this, and it's going to make up the ability for her to do a bunch of very strong effects in one turn, right? 45% mitigation for physical as well as magical, big HP barriers for a couple turns there. Remember, those things last 4 turns, and this cooldown is 3 turns. So you're going to be cycling through Inspiration, and you're going to be doing different buffs, and they're going to be lasting a long time, and they're going to be very strong effects. She has the ability to chain Mystic Cross support. She has the ability to chain Bolting Strike as well as her support of options to chain here. She has Wow, which is going to be a little bit of MP and LB gauge fill to your party. If you use it after Inspiration, it's going to go up to 10 LB gauge fill and 80 MP. Nothing as super amazing as the mitigations were, but it is something that she can do there. Passion Flood here is going to be an attachments, magic, and spirit buff, as well as earth, lightning, and dark resistance, as well as a break resistance to attachments, magic, and spirit as well. And if you use it after the Inspiration cooldown, it's going to be a 200% buff and a 100% resistant buff and a 100% attachments, magic, and spirit break resistance buff, all for 4 turns as well. You can keep this up full time with that cooldown as long as you're cycling through everything. She also has the ability to imbue water and wind to your whole party, as well as light. So water is AoE for 4 turns, wind is AoE for 4 turns, and light is AoE for 4 turns. If you use it after the Inspiration cooldown, not only do you get that imbue to your whole party, the buff is going to last 5 turns instead of 4 turns, and you're also going to get the special Pwn buff, where it's going to give your whole party the buff that increases that element type by 10% for 5 turns as well. So you're going to be able to imbue your whole party with water, wind, or light, and they're also going to do 10% bonus damage as long as they're doing water, wind, and light attacks, which, guess what? You can go ahead, you can do that, and it's going to be pretty strong, pretty powerful. So she could AoE imbue your party and give them bonus damage. She also has the ability to give out Plant Killer, both physical and magical, to your whole party. 50% before the Inspiration ability, 75% afterwards. This also works with the Stone ability here as well. Same sort of thing, 50% Stone Killer for physical and magical before the cooldown ability, 75% afterwards. It also is going to put up a damage mitigation effect, like we talked about that Daisy had for humans, but this one's going to be for plants as well as stone monsters. Like I said on the Daisy, not that big of a deal on that mitigation front, but it is something. It's going to be a little bit of extra damage mitigation if you're fighting those types here. She also has Blot Out, which is going to remove all status effects from allies and enemies, so it's like a big Dispelja, removes everything off of everybody. She's also going to have Dual Cast here. We talked about Inspiration. And then we have our final 3 cooldown skills here. 8-turn cooldown available on turn 1. Auto Revive 100% HP for 1 turn to 1 ally. 90% general mitigation for 1 turn to 1 ally. And an 80% increase all element resistance for 1 turn to 1 ally. So if you really don't want someone to die, but if they end up dying anyway, they get revived at full HP, this is a cooldown skill that you can do right there. It's not for your whole party. You're probably going to throw this on maybe a squishy damage dealer as you go through a very strong threshold attack. This might be something that you're going to utilize there because it's big damage mitigation, element resistance, and in case they still die, they're coming back at full health. So that could help out a lot there. Very strong cooldown skill. Graffiti tricks here. 6-turn cooldown available on turn 1. 230% attack defense, magic, and spirit buff for 3 turns to your whole party, as well as a 40% general damage mitigation for 3 turns to all allies there. And then her last cooldown skill, 6-turn cooldown available on turn 1. 200% high tide buff for 3 turns to your whole party. 30 LB gauge crystals to your whole party, and a 100% limit burst damage buff for 3 turns to all allies. And this effect cannot be dispelled. So very powerful thing. Especially like we talked about briefly when we talked about CG Squall, right? CG Squall doesn't have any sort of LB damage buff increase. There are some characters out there who do have really high base limit burst damage numbers, but they don't have a limit burst damage buff, and this is 100%. It is very big, so if you want to mess around with someone like 2B or Squall, characters like that who don't facilitate their own limit burst damage buff, she's going to be able to put this on them, imbue them, and give them the bonus damage for being imbued to the element that she just imbued. Very powerful. That's a lot of extra damage coming out from those sorts of limit burst damage characters. Then for passives, right, we have a mix of HP, magic, defense, and spirit. A lot of the stuff is going towards spirit. She does have 25% true duel with spirit, so she's going to be a little bit tanky. Nothing like super crazy, but she's going to have a fair amount of extra stats. She also has stone and plant killer, but she's not here to do damage. She's immune to stop, silence, paralysis, and she also absorbs MP from actual spells that the enemy casts. We've seen this with Sylvie. She's going to be another character who has it. So a lot of times it's not going to do all that much because it's actual spells. So you have to be getting hit by Blizzaja, Tornado, Flare, things of that nature. It's not just magic damage taken, it's actual spell. She has 50% high tide, and she auto-casts Dreams That Will Change the World at the beginning of the battle, which gives her turn 1 triple cast, which allows you to do a lot of cool stuff with her cooldown skills. You can use her cooldown skills, inspiration. I do believe you can also use something like negative prohibition, and then you can use like her AoE imbue. If you want to do an offensive start, so you get the 230% all stat buff, 100% limit burst damage, imbue a whole party, and give them the element damage buff as well. And then you have her limit burst here, live drawing time, 250% attack defense, magic, and spirit buff for 4 turns to all allies, and a 15%. It increases water, wind, and light damage dealt by your entire party by 15% for either physical or magic damage for 4 turns to all allies. So free 15% damage. This sort of buff doesn't exist in the game. It does become a little bit more prominent on characters later on, but they haven't really seen a support type character like Pone quite yet who does this. There are some characters like CG Hyo who do their own sort of like increased damage when you're doing fire, but nothing like a support character who can facilitate it on any character in your party. And then she also has decreased water, wind, and light resistance by 120% for 2 turns to all enemies there. So Pone is going to be the most unique, or as we should call her, maybe Poppy, will be the most unique character. And we haven't really seen them do another character like this yet. They probably will, in my opinion. Whether we see it or not, I have no idea. That's just my opinion. I think it's one of the ways for them to actually introduce more support to the game because she is so unique. It's just a way that you can add a new kind of buff. I think that's what they need to be doing, adding new sorts of mechanics to the game, new sorts of negative ailments, new sorts of positive buffs, things that you can do into the game. We'll see what they do. I think this was their test for this sort of character, and she is pretty powerful with the free sort of damage that she can unlock, even on someone like Neovision Tifa, right? Tifa does a bunch of water damage. Tifa doesn't have a do more water damage buff. You put Pone on her, that's what makes her sort of strong as you go into the future with Neovisions. Not only do Neovision's characters do incredible damage, if you have someone like Pone/Poppy laying around, you can make them do 15% more damage than any way that they were supposed to be doing it before, because no one really has these other sort of buffs that you can just put on other characters. So let's meet Pone. Remember, we have Pone, Daisy, Lakshmi Lid, and Freedom Seeker Vaughn. Those are going to be the 4 characters, guys, that I think are going to be worth your attention when you're looking towards the future in Brave Exvius. Remember, guys, rule number 1 is your favorite character, so go for it, but I don't think any sort of DPS character is really worth your attention if you're looking for a powerful investment or whatever it is. You can use them, you're going to have fun with them, but they're not going to compare to any sort of Neovision character that's a damage dealer. So thank you guys for the support and the time here. Have fun out there, be safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.